The sun hung high in the sky, its relentless rays pressing down on the unfamiliar landscape of the alien world. It was a planet at the far reaches of the galaxy, beyond the reach of any human colonies, one where even the most seasoned intergalactic explorers dared not venture. But humans had always been curious, always willing to venture where others feared to tread. This was why they had found their way here, an outpost of civilizations long forgotten, nestled in the folds of the universe. The invaders arrived without warning. They came from a species known as the Draath, a brutal and ruthless race with a reputation for conquest. They were used to dealing with weak, fractious civilizations, species that buckled under their might and never fought back. The Draath were stronger, smarter, faster, and they believed themselves to be the pinnacle of life in the galaxy. When their scouts first encountered the Earthlings, humans, they had assumed the same. Primitive, fragile beings, barely out of their infancy on the galactic scale. They couldn't have been more wrong. At first, the Draath were perplexed. The humans, with their soft, fleshy bodies and brittle bones, had proven to be far more resilient than they anticipated. But it wasn't their strength or their technology that had intrigued the invaders. It was something far more unexpected. Something they had never seen before in any species they had encountered. The Draath had assumed they were here to wipe out the humans. But what the Draath didn't understand was that the humans were not the weaklings they thought them to be. Their true strength lay not in physical power, but in something far more dangerous, something that the Draath had never considered. The first incident occurred on a remote outpost, a small village tucked away in the dense forests of Earth. The Draath landed their ships, their massive boots shaking the earth beneath them. Their soldiers, heavily armored and towering over the locals, demanded submission. But the humans did not bow. Instead, they watched silently, eyes filled with something the Draath had never seen before, resolve. One Draath soldier, a hulking brute named Karn, stepped forward. He was a veteran of countless battles, and in his mind, he had seen it all. His armored hand raised a weapon of devastating power, capable of vaporizing an entire platoon in an instant. The human in front of him, a woman, no more than 5 feet tall, stared up at him with cold defiance. "You will kneel," Karn commanded in his guttural voice. His words reverberated through the air, meant to instill fear. The humans simply stood their ground. Karn raised his weapon, ready to demonstrate the futility of their resistance. But before he could fire, a figure emerged from the crowd, a frail, elderly man carrying nothing but a small pouch of herbs and a simple wooden staff. Karn scoffed. "What is this? A fool?" The man shuffled forward, his gnarled hands trembling as he held out his pouch. The Draath soldiers stood still, confused by the human's strange behavior. "I ask for no battle," the old man said, his voice frail but steady. "I ask for a meal." Karn, amused, turned to his fellow soldiers. "You see? A weakling, a coward. These creatures only survive through submission. Let us teach them the price of defiance." Before anyone could react, the old man placed his pouch on the ground and opened it. Inside were small, unassuming pods, round, green, and no bigger than a human's thumb. With an air of ritual, the man picked one up and tossed it into his mouth. Karn's face twisted in disgust. "You eat that?" He motioned to his soldiers, "This is what they consider food." The old man's eyes twinkled with a mischievous gleam. He took another pod and ate it, chewing slowly as if savoring the taste. Then, without a word, he raised his staff high and struck the ground. The ground beneath them trembled, and the sky above darkened in an instant. The Draath soldiers looked around in confusion as a deep, low rumble echoed through the earth. The old man's staff crackled with energy as though it had come alive. Then, from the forests surrounding them, a great movement stirred. Hundreds, no, thousands, of giant, insect-like creatures emerged from the trees. Their bodies were armored with chitin, and their mandibles clicked ominously. The Draath soldiers opened fire, their weapons glowing with energy. But the blasts barely made a dent. The creatures, once thought to be harmless, now charged forward, their sheer mass crashing into the invaders. The Draath, accustomed to overwhelming firepower and strength, were caught off guard. The attack was swift, overwhelming, and relentless. Karn, in a panic, turned to flee, but his body was too slow. He was surrounded by the creatures, their pincers cutting through his armor with ease, dragging him into the earth. The human villagers, who had once cowered in fear, now stood tall, watching the chaos unfold. Their eyes were filled not with surprise, but with understanding. They had known all along that the true strength of their people lay not in the weapons they wielded, but in their unity, their resilience, and their connection to the world around them. The Draath were not the first invaders to underestimate humanity. And they would not be the last. As the battle raged on, the forest seemed to come alive, the air thick with a hum that resonated deep within the bones of everyone present. The Draath soldiers, confident conquerors of countless worlds, found themselves overwhelmed by the relentless assault of the insect-like creatures. Their once unstoppable weapons sputtered uselessly as the tide of nature's fury drowned them. The old man, staff still crackling with energy, turned to the villagers. His frail form straightened as if the very earth was lending him strength. "Do you see now?" he asked, his voice resonating with a quiet authority. "The Draath come with weapons and arrogance, but they forget, they are not the masters here. This world has its own guardians, and we are part of them." One of the younger villagers, a woman named Lyra, stepped forward, her eyes wide with realization. "You knew they would come," she said, her voice trembling. "You prepared for this." The old man nodded slowly. "I've lived long enough to know the patterns of the stars and the arrogance of those who believe they rule them. The Draath are like any other conqueror, they see only what they wish to see. They think us weak because we do not stand as they do, but our strength lies in the roots of this land, in the bonds we share with each other and the life around us." Lyra's gaze shifted to the battle. The insect-like creatures were relentless, their coordination almost eerie. It was as if they moved with a single mind, their strikes precise and unyielding. The Draath were being pushed back, their formation crumbling under the onslaught. "Are we safe now?" another villager asked, their voice tinged with both hope and fear. The old man's expression darkened. "Safe? No. Not yet. The Draath will not stop here. This is only a fraction of their might. They will return with more ships, more soldiers. They will not accept defeat so easily." A heavy silence fell over the group as the weight of his words sank in. The villagers had won this battle, but the war was far from over. "What can we do?" Lyra asked, stepping closer to the old man. "If they return, how do we fight them?" The old man smiled faintly, his eyes filled with both sorrow and pride. "You fight as you always have, with your hearts, with your minds, with your unity. But there is more to this world than even the Draath can imagine. You've seen the creatures of the forest, the power they hold. But there are other forces, older and stronger, waiting to be awakened." Lyra frowned. "Forces? You mean, magic?" "Call it what you will," the old man said, tapping his staff against the ground. "This world is alive, and it remembers. It remembers the ones who protect it, and it remembers the ones who threaten it. If you wish to protect your home, you must learn to listen to it, to understand its rhythms and its secrets." The villagers exchanged uncertain glances. They were farmers, artisans, simple folk. Could they truly rise to the challenge the old man spoke of? Before anyone could respond, a deep roar echoed through the forest. The battle was over. The Draath ships, battered and broken, had begun their retreat, their engines sputtering as they struggled to lift off. The insect-like creatures watched them go, their clicking mandibles almost triumphant. The villagers cheered, their relief palpable. But the old man did not join them. His gaze remained fixed on the horizon, where the Draath ships disappeared into the sky. "They will return," he murmured, almost to himself. But so will we. In the days that followed, the village transformed. Under the old man's guidance, the villagers began to train, not with weapons, but with the forces of the land itself. They learned to communicate with the creatures of the forest, to harness the energies of the earth and sky. Lyra, in particular, showed great promise, her determination and quick mind earning her the role of the old man's apprentice. Word of their victory spread to nearby settlements, and soon, other villages began to join them. The humans, once scattered and vulnerable, began to unite. They built alliances not only with each other but with the living world around them. Meanwhile, on a distant Draath warship, Karn stood before his superiors, battered and humiliated. His once proud armor was dented and scarred, a stark reminder of his failure. "They are not what we thought," Karn admitted, his voice low. "The humans, they are something else." The Draath commander leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "Explain." Karn hesitated, searching for the right words. "They are not strong in the way we are strong. But they are, connected. To their world, to each other. It gives them power, power we cannot understand." The commander sneered. "Then we will destroy their world. Burn it to ash. Let us see how strong their connection is when there is nothing left." But even as the Draath plotted their next move, the humans prepared for them. They were no longer the isolated, vulnerable species the Draath had first encountered. They had found their strength, not in weapons, but in the unity of their hearts, the wisdom of their elders, and the ancient, unyielding power of the world they called home. The next time the Draath returned, they would face not a village, but an entire planet ready to stand against them.